Well, good morning. You're watching news on the hour on Monday morning at 10. Comprehensive 1-hour bulletin where we bring you news from across the globe. Nation pays homage to Bharat Ratna Dr. B.R. Ambedkar on his Mahaparinirvan Diwas, or death anniversary today. Also, Russian President Vladimir Putin will pay a short visit to India, and India and Russia are set to ink a number of pacts to further boost cooperation in key areas, which will be our focus also. Correspondents will also be joining us with the latest sports and international updates too. We'll talk about the new variant Omicron, all of that in detail. My name is Abhishek Mahajan. First up, the headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Russian President Vladimir Putin to participate in 21st Annual India-Russia Summit in New Delhi today. Talks to focus on strengthening strategic partnership. First 2+2 dialogue to take place between the two nations. Various important bills scheduled to be tabled in Parliament today. Bills related to narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances. National Institute of Pharmaceutical Education and Research and others will be introduced in Lok Sabha, while bills related to surrogacy and assisted reproductive technology will be tabled in Rajya Sabha. Sixty new cases of Omicron variant recorded from Maharashtra and Rajasthan on Sunday. Government remains vigilant to check the spread of Omicron. Health Minister Dr. Mansukh Mandavia reviews RT-PCR testing facilities for passengers coming from at-risk countries at the IGI airport in New Delhi. And India in commanding position in Mumbai Test. Set big target of 540 for New Zealand. In reply, visitors lose 7 wickets in the second innings. The nation observes the death anniversary of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar as Mahaparinirvan Diwas today. President, Vice President, Prime Minister, Speaker pay floral tributes in the Parliament premises. Various other programs planned across the country to mark the day. Let's start with the top story. India and Russia are set to ink a number of pacts to further boost cooperation in key areas of defense, trade and investment, energy and technology at the summit talks between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Vladimir Putin today. It will be a short but hugely significant visit by the Russian President to New Delhi. The two sides will be holding the inaugural 2+2 defense and foreign ministerial talks. The two sides are also expected to focus on the situation in Afghanistan and threats emanating from terrorism.
When Russian President Vladimir Putin arrives in India on Monday for the 21st India-Russia Annual Summit, he along with Prime Minister Modi would be looking at ways to further the strategic partnership that exists between the two countries in a changing geopolitical scenario. Apart from the restricted one-on-one talks at the summit meet, there would also be one-on-one consultations between defense ministers and foreign ministers of the two countries. This would be followed by the first ever meeting of the India-Russia 2+2 dialogue led by the foreign and defense ministers of the two nations. The two sides are expected to hold intense engagements on issues ranging from ways to deepen bilateral cooperation in defense and military affairs, energy, agriculture, logistics, trade and connectivity to regional security concerns. Both in the summit meeting as well as in the inaugural 2+2 defense and foreign ministerial talks, the two sides are expected to focus on the situation in Afghanistan and threats arising out of terrorism.
They will begin with Raksha Mantri and his Russian counterpart, His Excellency Sergei Shoigu, co-chairing what is known as the Intergovernmental Commission, while External Affairs Minister will have a bilateral meeting with his counterpart, Russian Foreign Minister, His Excellency Mr. Sergei Lavrov. In the afternoon, the 21st India-Russia Annual Summit will be held, and we look forward to welcoming President Putin to New Delhi for this summit.
Several agreements to deepen cooperation in defense, trade, space, technology, energy and culture are expected to be inked during the summit. The two sides are expected to review their military technical cooperation agreement for 2021-2031. A key pact that could be signed is the reciprocal exchange of logistics agreement, which will allow militaries of two nations to access logistics and support facilities at each other's bases.
It would be a very comprehensive paper, a very comprehensive document covering all dimensions of our ties, beginning with the united global issues, global affairs and United Nations, revived commitment to its central position in modern world. Then would come multiple regional issues, naturally Afghanistan included, as a source of our common concern, and then much space would be devoted to bilateral ties.
The last India-Russia annual summit was held in September 2019 during the visit of Prime Minister Modi to Vladivostok. The annual summit could not take place last year due to COVID-19 pandemic. So far, 20 annual summit meetings have taken place alternatively in India and Russia. Under the Russia-India Intergovernmental Commission mechanism, at least 15 groups focused on economic cooperation between India and Russia have met virtually over the past 2 years, and the two sides have increased the target for the two-way investments to $50 billion by 2025, as the earlier target of $30 billion had been achieved in 2018. India is also focusing on trade and investment opportunities in Russia's Far East, including in coal and diamonds, and meeting manpower needs. As part of these efforts, 11 governors from the Far East provinces of Russia have been invited to Vibrant Gujarat meeting of 2022. Amritpal Singh, DD India.
Defense Minister Rajnath Singh is holding a bilateral meeting with his Russian counterpart Sergei Shoigu in New Delhi. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh and External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar will represent the Indian side in the 2+2 dialogue, and the Russian side will be represented by their Defense Minister and Foreign Affairs Minister. Right, my colleague Amritpal joins us to give us more information on this. Amritpal, Defense Minister Rajnath Singh is holding a bilateral meeting with his Russian counterpart Sergei Shoigu, and a 2+2 dialogue will also take place later in the day. And packed short India visit of Russian President Vladimir Putin also. Bilateral agreements are also expected to be signed, and few deals will also be inked.
That's right, Abhishek. There are essentially three meetings that are scheduled for today. First is and four you can say, one that's happening right now, where the defense ministers of the two countries, Rajnath Singh from the Indian side and Sergei Shoigu, are meeting. They are basically holding the meeting of the India-Russia Intergovernmental Commission on military technical cooperation, where they look at how the two militaries can look at furthering their technical cooperation which exists using each other's bases for logistics, transfer of technology, sharing data with each other that could be of navigational or strategic importance. So the two sides, the two defense ministers are talking about that. Of course, a whole gamut of the defense relationship is reviewed, recalibrated during these discussions. This is an institutionalized mechanism under which the two sides talk to each other. Various groups have met, about 15 groups have met in the past 2 years to take this forward. Now it is being held at the ministerial level. This will be followed by the meeting between the two external affairs ministers. It will be a one-on-one meeting between Dr. Jaishankar and Sergei Lavrov, where they'll look at narrowing down the convergences and divergences on various issues of strategic importance, especially regional security. Afghanistan would be in key focus. The threats emanating out of Pakistan, terrorism. India could also share its position on the border dispute or the border, the military standoff which exists on the Ladakh border. Later, it will be followed by what is called the 2+2 dialogue. This is the first ever 2+2 dialogue that's happening between India and Russia. where the two defense ministers and the two foreign ministers are present, and they look at, basically diplomatic and political issues. As the ambassador of Russia to India was saying, beginning with, your positions on global issues, on regional issues, especially Afghanistan, on what your position is, what the Russian position is, and how you can cooperate and converge on that. From an Indian standpoint, the looming threat of terrorism or the Afghan soil being used by terrorist organizations like the Lashkar or the Jaish-e-Mohammed, which are essentially Pakistan-based organizations and which could have a free run in Afghanistan. So those are concerns that shall be discussed at the 2+2 dialogue, and also, of course, recalibrating your relationship with them in terms of the changing global scenario. From the Russians might want to pick up the issue of the Indo-Pacific, and the Indians would clear their position on how they look at, for example, the Quad or the Indo-Pacific. This shall be followed in the afternoon by the summit level meeting, the 21st annual summit, India-Russia annual summit, where the two principals, Prime Minister Modi and President Putin, will be, reviewing the entire gamut of bilateral relationship from defense to technology, trade, investment, energy, space, civil nuclear cooperation, taking economic ties forward, connectivity, logistics. So this is going to happen in the day, and as you rightly say, there are a number of agreements that are likely to be signed by the end of the day, and also we expect a comprehensive joint statement which will elaborate on the discussions and the way forward for both countries to deepen this special and privileged strategic partnership that exists between the two countries. Abhishek?
Right, Amritpal, and also Putin and Prime Minister Narendra Modi will also have an opportunity to exchange views on regional, multilateral and international issues of mutual interest, and also, like you mentioned, focus on situation in Afghanistan also and threats emanating from terrorism.
That's right. This is something which is going to dominate the agenda. Because what happens in Afghanistan is of key concern to both countries. They are important players in the region and in Afghanistan. Russia, as you know, maintains, is one of the few countries, handful countries, which maintain a mission in Afghanistan, while the other have chosen to sort of exit from Afghanistan because of the security situation there. So India and Russia would be talking about the true principles when they meet, and also, as you rightly say, at the other levels also, at the defense and foreign ministers levels also, this would be a key concern. So both sides would be exchanging notes on how they look at Afghanistan, how they look at Taliban, what is the way forward, how to engage with the Taliban, how to look at the evolving humanitarian crisis there, how Taliban can be nudged to look at, leading an inclusive and a truly representative government in Afghanistan that takes care of Afghan concerns and also concerns from a security point of view of regional partners and neighbors like India, Russia. So the two, when Prime Minister Modi and President Putin sit down, this will be a key focus. From an Indian standpoint, the issue of terrorism would be a key focus, that how Afghan soil should not be used for terrorist activities, especially by outfits that operate out of Pakistan, but might want to use the Afghan soil as their strategic backyard. That's a concern which resonates and would resonate with Russia also, because if fundamentalism and terrorism is exported to the Central Asian countries, or what are known as the CIS countries, so that is something which is of key concern to Russia. So the two sides would be going into detailed discussions on what the way forward should be on that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Amritpal. I will keep taking updates from you. Thank you so much for the time being. Moving on to our further story, let's now take a look at important legislative business to be taken up in both the houses of Parliament today. The Lok Sabha is scheduled to take up the National Institute of Pharmaceutical Education and Research Amendment Bill 2021 today. Union Health Minister Dr. Mansukh Mandavia will move the bill for consideration and passage. Also, the High Court and Supreme Court judges' salaries and conditions of service amendment bill 2021 will be taken into consideration and passing. The Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Amendment Bill 2021 will also be introduced in the lower house today. In Rajya Sabha, Union Health Minister Dr. Mansukh Mandavia will move the Assisted Reproductive Technology Regulation Bill 2021 for consideration and passing. The bill has been already passed by Lok Sabha. Dr. Mansukh Mandavia will also move the Surrogacy Regulation Bill 2020 for consideration and passing in the upper house. And Power Pack Day in the Parliament today. Moving on to a further story. Now, India continued to fight against COVID-19 pandemic, carrying out aggressive vaccination drive across the country. Now, it is a moment of great pride for every citizen, as over 50% of the eligible population are now fully vaccinated. And expressing delight over India's vaccination drive crossing another important milestone, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said it is important to keep this momentum to strengthen the fight against COVID-19. He added that along with this, we must keep following all other COVID-19 related protocols, including masking up and social distancing. And let's now take a look at India's COVID-19 vaccination data from across the country. With the administration of over 24,55,000 vaccine doses in the last 24 hours, cumulatively 127 crore 93 lakh 9,669 beneficiaries have been vaccinated across the country so far. The vaccination exercise as a tool to protect the most vulnerable population groups in the country from COVID-19 continues to be regularly reviewed and monitored at the highest level. Well, let's now take a look at COVID-19 situation from across the country. The recovery of 8,834 patients in the last 24 hours has increased the cumulative tally of recovered patients to 3 crore 40 lakh 69,608. Consequently, India's recovery rate stands at 98.35%. 8,306 new cases were reported in the last 24 hours. Active case load presently stands at 98,416, which is lowest in 552 days. Active cases account for less than 1% of total cases and currently constitute 0.28% of the country's total positive cases, which is lowest since March 2020. The testing capacity across the country continues to be expanded. India has so far conducted over 64.82 crore cumulative tests. While testing capacity has been enhanced across the country, weekly positivity rate at 0.78% remains less than 1% for the last 22 days now. The daily positivity rate reported to be 0.94%, and the daily positivity rate has remained below 2% for last 63 days. And total cases of Omicron in the country has risen to 21. 9 new cases of Omicron variant of COVID-19 were reported from Rajasthan, 7 cases from Maharashtra and 1 case from Delhi on Sunday. Rajasthan Health Department said that 9 members from a family in Jaipur tested positive for Omicron on Sunday. These people had returned from South Africa. All have already been admitted at Rajasthan University of Health Sciences Hospital in Jaipur. In Maharashtra, 8 persons have been found to be infected with the Omicron variant so far. As many as 6 persons have tested positive for the Omicron variant of COVID-19 in Pimpri Chinchwad in the Pune district, while 1 case of Omicron was found in Pune. The first 2 cases of Omicron in India were reported from Karnataka last week. The other 2 cases were detected from Gujarat and Maharashtra, while 1 person tested positive for the variant in Delhi on Sunday. Union Health Minister Dr. Mansukh Mandavia on Sunday reviewed the RT-PCR testing facilities at Delhi's IGI airport as the tally of cases of Omicron variant of coronavirus reached 21 in the country. The Health Minister in a tweet said, and I quote, reviewed RT-PCR testing facilities for passengers coming from at-risk countries at the IGI airport, New Delhi. 35 rapid RT-PCR testing machines are functional at Terminal 3. With this, screening and testing time of passengers can be reduced to even 30 minutes. And the list of countries from where travellers would need to follow additional measures on arrival in India, including post-arrival testing, include the United Kingdom, South Africa, Brazil, Botswana, China, Mauritius, New Zealand, Zimbabwe, Singapore, Hong Kong and Israel. The 11th edition of exercise Equivalent between India and Maldives will be conducted at Kadu Island, Maldives from today. It will conclude on the 19th of this month. The exercise will enhance synergy and interoperability between the armed forces of both nations in terms of understanding transnational terrorism both on land and at sea, conducting counter-terrorism and counter-insurgency operations and sharing best military practices and experiences. Besides rigorous training, the joint military exercise will also include cultural and sports activities to enhance defence cooperation and bilateral relations. Defence Ministry said the exercise will go a long way in strengthening India's relations with the Maldives amidst emerging security dynamics in the Indian Ocean region. And the nation pays homage to Bharat Ratna Dr. B.R. Ambedkar on his Mahaparinirvan Diwas or death anniversary today. Well, a number of functions are being organized all over the country to highlight the contributions of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in the nation building. President Ramnath Kovind, Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu, Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Leader of the Opposition Rajya Sabha Mallikarjun Kharge and other parliamentarians paid tributes to the architect of the Constitution at his statue in the Parliament House complex in New Delhi this morning. The father of the Indian Constitution, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, was a jurist, economist, politician and a social reformer who campaigned against social discrimination of downtrodden women and labourers. Baba Saheb was conferred the Bharat Ratna posthumously in 1990. And the nation is marking the death anniversary of Bharat Ratna Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar today as the Mahaparinirvan Diwas. On this occasion, the Governor of Maharashtra Bhagat Singh Koshyari paid floral tributes to Baba Saheb Ambedkar at Chaityabhumi this morning. And President Ramnath Kovind will be visiting Maharashtra on a 4-day visit starting today. The President will visit Raigad Fort today and pay tributes to Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. On Tuesday, the President will visit Air Force Station Lohegaon, Pune, where he will witness flying displays and interact with air warriors. The President will present President's standard to the 22nd Missile Vessel Squadron in Mumbai on Wednesday. Right, we'll slip into a very short break. On the other side, more stories.
As the day unfolds and news and events take shape, we get you complete coverage of every news breaking in, tracking new developments as they happen. Midday Prime English, Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. on DD India.
Welcome back. Let's now take a look at updates on COVID-19 from across the world. COVID-19 cases have begun spiraling once again globally. The tally of COVID-19 cases has crossed 26 crore 61 lakh globally, while so far more than 23 crore 97 lakh people have recovered from the virus so far. Over 52 lakh 70,000 people have lost their lives to the virus. The US continues to remain the worst affected country, with the disease registering more than 4 crore 99 lakh cases and over 8 lakh fatalities. And COVID-19 cases have been increasing all across European countries, with the United Kingdom being the hardest hit in the continent. The UK has more than 1 crore 4 lakh cases of COVID-19, followed by France, where the cases have risen above 79 lakh and 17,000. Germany also registers a spike in the number of cases, with total tally standing above 61 lakh and 79,000. Italy trails behind it, where over 51 lakh COVID-19 cases have been registered. And as cases have started to rise in the European countries, protests have been happening over COVID-19 restrictions. In Belgium, police fired tear gas and used water cannons on Sunday to disperse protesters, pelting officers with cobblestones and fireworks as a demonstration in Brussels over government-imposed COVID-19 restrictions turned violent. Protesters marched peacefully through the centre of the Belgian capital to the neighbourhood which hosts the headquarters of European Union institutions. However, the crowd was smaller than the 35,000 vaccine and lockdown skeptics who marched last month. Protesters were blocked from reaching outside the EU headquarters by a barbed wire barricade and a line of riot officers. Demonstrators were protesting rules imposed in October that oblige people to show COVID-19 passes to access bars and restaurants. The protests followed new measures announced on Friday to curb one of Europe's highest infection rates, including mandatory mask wearing for most primary school children and a lengthening of the school holidays. Rome on Sunday prepared for tighter rules on unvaccinated people who will not be able to enter venues such as cinemas, restaurants and sports events that come into force from today. With shopping streets crowded by Christmas frenzy, Rome already tightened COVID-19 restrictions, imposing the use of face masks in outdoor crowded areas, with local police officers checking residents and tourists respect the measure. According to the new measures adopted by the Italian government to try to grapple with the new wave of the pandemic, from today, people unwilling to take an anti-COVID vaccine will have restricted access to an array of services. The decision was welcomed by Romans. And the government extended mandatory vaccination already in force for healthcare workers to all school staff, police and the military beginning from December 15th. In addition, third doses of the vaccine, so-called boosters, currently available to those over 40 years of age, will be made available to everyone over the age of 18. The measures tightened the requirements for a green pass, a certificate that allowed the vaccinated access to various leisure activities and services. In a surprise move, the government also decided to make the green pass mandatory for use on urban public transport. For access to public transport, the green pass will be available to those with a negative test, not just the vaccinated. Italy has registered 134,152 deaths linked to COVID-19 since February last year, the second highest toll in Europe after Britain and the 9th highest in the world. It has reported more than 5 million cases to date. Meanwhile, a Jordanian court sentenced 5 senior health officials to 3 years in jail on Sunday for causing the death of 10 COVID-19 patients following an oxygen outage in a major state hospital. The court found the former director of the state hospital in Salt and 4 of his senior aides responsible for the deaths. The patients who were being treated in the hospital died in March when staff failed to act after oxygen ran out in a COVID-19 ward for nearly an hour. The disaster, which politicians and local activists said exposed gross negligence, in the state health system during a spike in COVID-19 infections, sparked anti-government protests across many cities and provincial towns. Health Minister Nasir Obeidat resigned hours after the incident, and in a public apology, Prime Minister Bashar al-Khawasne said his government bore full responsibility for the incident. Shortly after the death, King Abdullah visited the hospital and publicly scolded health officials in the corridor of the hospital, where police were deployed to hold back hundreds of angry relatives and protesters who were encircling the compound. A court in Myanmar is expected to deliver a verdict on ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi today for allegedly breaching COVID-19 restrictions during a general election campaign. A verdict was due on November 30th but was deferred due to unknown reasons. The verdict will be the first in Suu Kyi's trial. She is facing 11 criminal cases with maximum sentences that total more than a century in jail. Those include corruption and violating the Official Secrets Act. The country's military had seized power on February 1st, overthrowing and detaining the elected civilian leader Suu Kyi. It said it took power because its complaints of fraud by Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy Party, which won last year's election in a landslide, were being ignored by the Election Commission. The NLD says it won fairly. Meanwhile, in Myanmar's capital Yangon, several people were injured after a military truck rammed into a crowd of protesters. Since February's coup, more than 1,200 people have been killed during protests and thousands more imprisoned. The anti-junta protest was one of at least 3 held in Yangon on Sunday. Since military forces have often opened fire on protesters in the past, demonstrations are often held in small organized groups to minimize casualties. The UN has said that the military's crackdown could amount to crimes against humanity, but its envoys have repeatedly been denied access to Myanmar to investigate. The junta has justified the pre-dawn coup in February by alleging there was voter fraud in last year's general elections, which the party of Myanmar's then leader Aung San Suu Kyi won by a landslide. A Malaysia court will deliver its verdict on Wednesday on an appeal filed by former Premier Najib Razak over his conviction in a corruption case related to State Fund One Malaysia Development Berhad. Sentenced last year to 12 years in jail and fined $50 million. Najib was found guilty of criminal breach of trust, abuse of power and money laundering for illegally receiving about $10 million from SRC International, a former unit of now defunct 1MDB. 68-year-old Najib had appealed the verdict and is out on bail. He has consistently denied the wrongdoing. Gambian President Adama Barrow has comfortably won re-election in a vote that set the bar for a new chapter in the small West African nation's democracy. Barrow received around 53% of Saturday's vote, far outstripping his nearest rival, political veteran Osainu Darboe, who won about 28%. The vote was country's first in decades that did not include former dictator Yahya Jammeh, who now lives in exile in Equatorial Guinea, of losing the 2016 election and refusing to accept the defeat. Nearly 8.6 lakh Gambians came to vote on Saturday, a high number that shows a determination for many to exercise their democratic rights as demands for justice in the post-Jammeh era rise. Violence erupted as French TV personality Eric Zemmour held his first campaign rally on Sunday near Paris, a few days after he formally declared his candidacy for April's presidential election. Fighting broke out and chairs were thrown at activists who stood up with "No to Racism" written on their T-shirts. Blood was visible on at least 2 of them as they were ejected from the auditorium. Zemmour promised a reconquest against decades of decline during his nearly an hour-and-a-half long speech, the first he has given since declaring his candidacy. He said he was calling his party Reconquest, a name that evokes the historic period known as the Reconquista, when Christian forces drove Muslim rulers from the Iberian Peninsula. Zemmour, who has been convicted for inciting racial hatred, is the main challenger to longtime far-right figure Marine Le Pen for a place in a second runoff round of next April's election, most likely against President Emmanuel Macron. In Rio de Janeiro, dozens of women marched on Sunday to demand an end to gender-based violence. Wearing bright orange and chanting for an end to violence, women called on society as a whole to speak out together against femicides and domestic violence. Protesters comes amid reports that the pandemic has aggravated gender-based violence. Brazil recorded 649 femicides during the first half of 2020, up 2% from the same period in 2019.
Conference, and I think today we have an opportunity not only to discuss our bilateral ties and the global situation, but also we will be participating in the first 2+2 meeting, and of course later in the evening we will be joining our leaders for the annual summit. We are very, for us the annual summit of course is a very unique event. Prime Minister Modi and President Putin share a relationship of great trust and confidence, and they will actually be meeting. The annual summit is taking place after a gap of 2 years because of the COVID. So we are looking forward to some very significant outcomes from the summit. Our partnership is indeed very special, it's very unique, and we are very conscious that in a world of rapid geopolitical changes, it has in fact been remarkably steady and strong. And I would also like to take the opportunity to underline that we are very satisfied with our bilateral relations and the state of our cooperation. Despite the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, Prime Minister Modi and President Putin have held 2 conversations this year. They have taken part in the virtual summits of the BRICS and the SCO. And we've had also some exchanges of physical visits. The Secretary of your Security Council was here. Our Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas had visited Russia. The Minister of Steel had been there. And these have all been really very, very productive. So I welcome you once again. I'm very, very confident that our discussions today would be very fruitful, very productive, and that we will be contributing to the outcomes in the summit.
Уважаемый господин министр, дорогой друг, я хотел бы поддержать то, что вы сказали о качестве наших отношений.
Dear Minister, dear friend, I would like to the Russian Foreign Ministry, and speaking there, he pointed out the utmost significance of our specially privileged partnership with the Republic of India.
И у нас сейчас сезон очень интенсивного политического диалога после паузы, которая была объективно вызвана пандемией коронавирусной инфекции. Контакты возобновляются.
And right now it is indeed the season of active political contact after a pause which, due to objective circumstances, was brought about by the pandemic of COVID-19. Right now the contacts are resuming.
Мы с вами были своего рода первопроходцами, трижды уже в этом году встретились, сегодня 4-й контакт.
You and I were sort of pioneers in that regard. We met 3 times already throughout this year, and this is our first, 4th contact.
Но недавно, как вы сказали, встречались секретари Совета Безопасности. Сегодня состоялось уже, по-моему, как я понимаю, заседание межправительственной комиссии по военно-техническому сотрудничеству с участием наших военных коллег. И предстоит встреча 2+2 буквально после завершения нашей беседы.
As you said, our secretaries of security councils have met, and as far as I understand, the meeting of the Intergovernmental Commission on Military and Technical Cooperation has already taken place this morning among our friends, our colleagues from the defense ministries, and we're also awaiting the 2+2 format, which is going to take place.
Увенчает сегодняшний переговорный марафон, саммит. Это будет, я уверен, одно из знаковых событий в российско-индийских отношениях. Готовится целый пакет, подготовлен целый пакет важных документов, поэтому будем делать все, чтобы решений, которые сегодня наши лидеры одобрят, выполнялись четко и своевременно.
And this negotiating marathon is going to be crowned by the summit later today. I'm confident that this is going to be an emblematic event. A whole package of significant documents has been drafted for signing, for adoption, and everything is going to be in line with our agreements.
Спасибо за гостеприимство.
Thank you very much for your hospitality.
Thank you, pleasure. We'll just wait for the media to leave.
Right, so we were showing you live visuals of Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov meeting with the External Affairs Minister Dr. Subramaniam Jaishankar. Dr. Jaishankar mentioned about the schedule ahead later in the day and also bilateral meeting between India and Russia and strategic partnership that exists between both the countries. First ever 2+2 dialogue will take place, and then of course Russian President Vladimir Putin and PM Modi will meet later in the day for the India-Russia annual summit. Right, so we are heading for another short break. On the other side, more international stories.
Namaste India.
Namaste land.
Marhaban ila al-Hind.
Zari India. Ni hao.
Salam India. Namaste India.
Namaskar Bharata.
Nous sommes là.
نحن
هنود. India. Ma Hindi hasti. Hindian.
Salam Hindustan.
We are India.
Your window to rising India. India's voice on global platforms. Latest news from India and around the world. In-depth analysis of global headlines. Watch DD India in your country. Available for downlink in all Southeast Asian countries. STTV broadcast is available through the satellite GSAT 17 at 93.5 degrees east. HDTV broadcast is available through the satellite GSAT 10 at 83 degrees east. For technical details, scan here. Switch to DD India now.
Welcome back. The United States strongly condemns a militant attack on a bus in central Mali that killed at least 31 people and wounded 17. Unidentified gunmen on Friday opened fire on the bus as it traveled from the village of Songo to a market in Bandegara, 10 km away. The attack left 31 dead and 17 injured. The villages sit in the heart of the Mopti region, an epicenter of violence in Mali, fueled by insurgents linked to Al-Qaeda and Islamic State. Jihadist attacks have surged across Africa's Sahel region, killing thousands and displacing millions across Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger. The Liberation War fighters of Bangladesh recounted the valiant fight of the Mukti Jodhas and the contribution of the Indian Army in the war against Pakistan, leading to the liberation of Bangladesh in the year 1971. In the run-up to the Maitri Diwas today, the High Commission of India in Bangladesh on Sunday invited some of the prominent Liberation War fighters of Bangladesh to share their experiences of the historic events in 1971. Calling the Liberation War of Bangladesh as people's movement, the veterans expressed gratitude to the help provided by the Indian government. They recounted stories of fighting against Pakistan Army shoulder to shoulder with Indian Army and immense sacrifices made by both the Mukti Bahini and the Indian Armed Forces during this difficult phase of Bangladesh's history. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi has extended greetings on Maitri Diwas as India and Bangladesh celebrate 50 years of friendship. PM Modi has tweeted And this is what he has tweeted. Today, India and Bangladesh commemorate Maitri Diwas. We jointly recall and celebrate the foundations of our 50 years of friendship. I look forward to continue working with PM Sheikh Hasina to further expand and deepen our ties. In Indonesia, rescuers are still searching for survivors in villages buried by hot ash after Mount Semeru on Java Island erupted on Sunday. In a barren landscape covered with ash, homes were almost completely submerged. 14 people are known to have died and 56 people were injured, while 1,300 have been evacuated. The evacuation has been hampered by choking smoke, a power blackout and rainstorms during the eruption, which turned the debris into mud. As per Met Department, heavy rain is expected for the next 3 days, which could further complicate evacuation efforts. Mount Semeru is among Indonesia's almost 130 active volcanoes. The last time it erupted was in December 2020, forcing thousands of residents to take the shelter. Indonesia sits on the Pacific Ring of Fire, where continental places meet, causing frequent volcanic and seismic activity. Well, let's take an update on the Cumbre Vieja volcano in Spain's La Palma that has been active since past few months. Drone footage by Spain's Geological and Mining Institute showed red-hot lava from Cumbre Vieja volcano engulfing houses and flowing towards Atlantic Ocean. Canary Islands Volcanic Emergency Plan said on Sunday that new vents opened up on the cone with several very fluid lava flows. Pevolca also said these lava flows are moving at high speed onto land not previously covered by lava. The latest count of destroyed buildings rose to 2,790, and the area now covered by lava flows increased by 9 hectares to now 1,155 hectares. However, seismic activity has been decreasing further. During the latest 24-hour reporting interval, the National Geographic Institute detected only 35 quakes under the island, none of which was felt by the population at a wider scale. The quakes occurred under the central area of Cumbre Vieja in the same areas as during the whole time of the eruption. 33 of these earthquakes were located at depths of 17 kilometers and only 3 at depths greater than 34 kilometers. The amplitude of the volcanic tremor signal remains low and more stable than in previous days. In some other news, an avalanche has killed 4 skiers in central Austria. An estimated 200-meter wide sheet of snow has hit 8 people on Saturday while skiing in the Twang area in Salzburg province. 3 of the skiers died in the snow, while 2 were partly buried and able to free themselves. Rescues were able to locate 2 of the others with the help of their search devices. One was already dead and the other later died at a hospital in Klagenfurt. Moving further, millions of monarch butterflies have descended on their sanctuary in the central Mexican state of Michoacan, an annual spectacle that draws tourists, scientists and locals alike. The monarch butterfly flee the cold winters of Canada and northern United States and travel thousands of kilometers to hibernate and reproduce in the temperate woods of central Mexico. Hundreds of trees crowded with butterflies can be seen along Mexico's 13,000-hectare monarch reserve after a 2,000-mile journey. However, experts warn of a drop in monarch numbers. According to conservationist group WWF, the butterflies occupied only 2.1 hectares in December 2020 compared with 2.8 hectares the previous winter season. Climate change is reported to have had an impact on the butterflies' migration pattern as well as the reduction in their milkweed breeding habitat in the United States. In Mexico, folk dancers paraded through the streets in elaborate costumes on Saturday as part of a festive tradition that mocks Spanish conquistadors from colonial times, known locally as Chinelos. This dance reportedly dates back to the 19th century and sees locals imitate the elaborate dress and fair skin of Europeans at the time of Mexico's colonialization. Although the dance is normally performed during carnival season in Mexico, this parade is a modern take of the custom for the capital in order to revive the tradition. Thousands lined the city streets to catch a glimpse of the dancers, with different groups of performers coming from different delegations in the Mexico City. And hundreds of curious onlookers visited Las Canteras beach on Sunday to watch the nativity scene sculpted by international artists in Spain's Gran Canaria. 8 artists from different countries finished on Friday the nativity scenes after a week on the island. Artists have been coming from all over the world since 2006 to take part in the event to mark the start of the Christmas season, with the added bonus of warm weather and a balmy 22 degrees Celsius temperature. The exhibition attracts thousands of visitors every year, and in the past 15 years it is estimated that at least 200,000 people have visited, according to the organizers. A huge wall of sand protects the sculptures, which will be dismantled on 7th January. Another story from Spain. Balloonists took to the skies over the town of Antequera in southern Spain on Sunday for the Hot Air Balloon Kings Cup 2021. The best 25 balloon pilots from Spain and other European countries competed in 2 different races. The first event of Spain's King Cup consisted of flying towards physical and digital targets with some coordinates. In the second one, pilots had to catch up with a hot air balloon that had taken off 10 minutes before the rest to get points. And good news coming in cricket. India beat New Zealand by 372 runs at the Wankhede Stadium in Mumbai to win second and the final test. Defending a target of 540, Ravichandran Ashwin and Jayant Yadav picked 4 wickets each, while Axar got 1 in New Zealand's second innings. With this win, the hosts also clinched the 2-match series 1-0. In badminton, Indian badminton ace PV Sindhu settled for a silver medal at the BWF World Tour Finals after going down against Korean player An Se-young in the summit clash in Bali on Sunday. Sindhu, the reigning world champion and 2-time Olympic medalist, lost 16-21, 12-21 in the 40-minute lopsided clash. And festive cheer is in the air with the holiday season in full bloom. The snow-white slopes of Maine in the United States were covered in crimson, with revelers sporting Santa's signature red suit with white trim skiing on the slopes. This was the 21st annual Santa Sunday. Before we end this edition of News on the Hour, we'll leave you with these cheery scenes. Take a look. Bye-bye.